Hello, everyone. My name is Josh, and I'm going to be giving a presentation for my Into the Mind of a Criminal class here with Seminole State. So the assignment was to pick a topic from chapter 6 of our book, and then make a quick presentation on it. So the topic of choice that I went ahead and used is the topic of the definitions of delinquency. So delinquency is probably a term or word that we've all heard of before. It's pretty common. You hear people use it all the time in church or at school or work, wherever it may be. You hear it all the time. And I'm sure most people have a pretty good idea of what the term delinquency means. Um, and I say that because I thought I had a pretty good idea of what it meant. But once I actually read into the chapter, I realized that there were a lot more definitions for it, and there was a lot more to it than just that. So you actually have three different kinds of definitions for it. You have a legal definition, you have a social definition, and also a psychological definition, which I honestly thought was kind of surprising because I always thought it was just a cut and dry, this is delinquency, and that's what it is. Um, and with that, going forward, the most common one that, I knew of was the legal term. So the legal definition for delinquency is a behavior against criminal code committed by someone who is not of an adult age defined by a state or federal law. So in some states or by federal law, you could be an adult by 16 per se, and in most states across the board it's 18. So basically anyone under 18 who is committing some sort of crime. Um, so with that, you also have something called youthful offenders. So that's someone who is above 18, typically within like the 19 to 21 range. Depending on what they did, they might be referred to as a youthful offender. So they may not be tried as an adult. Depending on the crime and how serious it was, they may be tried as in the juvenile court, which for them, it can be a perk. But that is also another portion for the definition of delinquency. Now, in some states, typically when someone under the age of 18, they commit some sort of crime or whatever it may be, they typically go to a juvenile court. Now, with that, sometimes, depending on how serious the crime is, some states actually have the authority to go completely past juvenile court and go straight into an adult trial criminal court, which I also didn't know. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought I would bring that up. Now, the second definition that we have is the social definition. So the legal definition was the most common one, the one that most people are going to know. Now, there's also a social definition. So that is where youthful behaviors is considered inappropriate. So youthful behaviors being, being aggressive around a lot of people, trying to intimidate other people. A lot of ones you see in school is bullying. That's a really big one that people see because you can actually press charges depending on how the bullying is being done. And also petty theft, stealing a bag of chips from the grocery store or stealing some makeup from Walmart, stuff like that. That is social delinquency. So with that, a lot of the times, the police may or may not be involved. The police may not even know what's going on. No one may have reported it. So a lot of times that can happen with the social delinquency. Now with that, a lot of the times these individuals will be referred to maybe a church official or a counselor or a community social agent, something along those lines to try to get them back on track. And with that, they actually have something that I thought was pretty cool. Instead of just immediately arresting them or going to jail or whatever it is, going straight to court, they actually have things called diversion programs. So this is where if the individual will admit to the wrongdoings and their youthful behaviors per se, and they admit to those activities, they can actually join programs. And with those programs, you do that instead of having to go to court. So it lessens the blow to that individual, makes it a little bit easier on them, and actually gets them help. Doesn't automatically throw them into court and put them in the system. It actually gets them help, counseling, the whole 9 yards. So the last definition is actually a psychological definition. So there's two different definitions for this. So it's kind of definitions within a definition. So the first example of this is you have conduct disorder. That is the first kind of a psychological definition for delinquency. So with this, that's actually a diagnostic label. So it's kind of just an upfront thing that people use to label children who are demonstrating a continued or habitual misbehavior. So, someone's at school, they're bullying other kids, you bring them into the office, you tell them you can't do that, so on and so forth. You get them counseling, you do what you can, but every single time, it's just continued misbehavior. That is a conduct disorder. And so that is one psychological definition. Another is an antisocial behavior. So this one is a lot more serious. This is when the continued misbehavior gets a lot more serious, and typically involves harm to others, and intended harm, not just, oh, I didn't mean to do that, a direct intentional harm to others. So that's when you use antisocial behavior. And that's not to be confused with the adult definition, which is a antisocial personality disorder. That's only for adults. That's not used for the juvenile community. So don't get the two confused. So part of that is that actually a lot of children have mental disorders. So things such as anxiety, severe depression, things of those sorts, those actually contribute to that antisocial behavior or those conduct disorders. So sometimes they can't really help it. Now, earlier in other chapters, we learned where if you actually treat those disorders, it's actually proven that there are less offenses that go along with it. So if they have severe anxiety or severe depression, if you get them counseling for that or do whatever you need to do to help them with those other mental disorders, the actual level of conduct disorder or the actual level of misbehavior goes down tremendously. So that was the topic I decided to cover. Thank you very much for your time.